Green Noise is back.
The conservation sector in general is faced with serious challenges, and we're actually losing species. Problem is getting out of hand. It means we need a different type of leadership.
The private sector is critical to conservation, and I think that the key message is that conservation is everybody's job.
Everything that we do it for the people and nature.
Hi, welcome back to Green Noise, a podcast from Cape Nature. My name is Dan Corder. We're now going to have an absolutely wonderful conversation about the new Conservationist. Let me now introduce you to the two wonderful people who will be starring in this conversation. The first is Natalie Hayward, a Cape Nature Executive Director. Natalie, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Dan. It's wonderful to be here.
It is an absolute treat. And the second person to introduce you to is Sabelo Lindani, MD no less. So big two letters, MD, of the Contour Enviro Group. Nice to meet you, Sabelo.
Great to meet you too, man. It's lovely to be here.
It's wonderful to have you both here. So I just want to start with what you both do, because I think something about enjoying nature and Cape Nature and the natural environs is not knowing the people and exactly what they do to make such wonderful things. So Sabelo, first, tell me a little bit about Contour Enviro Group.
Contour Enviro Group is an environmental management company. We started about 8 years ago. And our focus is around accredited conservation training. So we provide leadership courses to the conservation sector, basically.
Okay, and you used to be at Cape Nature, is that right?
Actually, I used to manage Hottentotsland, this particular nature reserve. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Has it dipped since you left? You can say.
Yeah, it's amazing. No, it's beautiful. The guys are doing a great job.
Oh, you're saying they're doing better than you did when you were here?
I mean, it has to be like that. It has to improve over time, of course.
Amazing. And Natalie, tell me a little bit about your role in Cape Nature and what exactly that makes your day-to-day work like.
Sure. Thank you very much. Yeah, so I oversee the operational arm of the organization. So that's essentially where the workflow happens, from being out in the field, where we are here today, collecting the data, collecting information, which essentially informs planning, costings, and ultimately at the end of the day, strategies. And of course, my team and I are responsible for implementation. So nature reserves such as the Hottentots sit under my portfolio, and I was very blessed to work with Sabelo in the past. He has an intimate knowledge of what it takes to manage nature reserves and contribute to the conservation effort. And then, of course, the operational arm also looks after wildlife regulation and a lot of community outreach and stakeholder engagement. I do need to mention, however, that I work very closely hand in glove with the Ecotourism and Access Directorate. And then, of course, we also work very closely with our Science and Policy Directorate, biodiversity capabilities. And through those two strategic directions and with operations, we make sure that the implementation happens on the ground.
Is there anything you don't do?
Probably not.
Is there a part of Cape Nature that you did not just mention?
No, I mean, as an example, I spent most of yesterday on HR items.
Okay.
So anything from an HR item to looking at a costing, to making sure that we're spending our budgets in the right place, to checking and tracking and reporting, to guiding and informing strategy and policy, and of course working with our stakeholders and our partners.
What do you prefer, being in Hottentots Holland or doing HR?
I think this is a wonderful opportunity to be in the office. And I must agree that Hottentots Holland is looking good. I wouldn't say it's because Sabelo left, but probably because conservation has changed.
Amazing. So, Sabelo, I wanted to ask you, as soon as you described Contour Enviro Group and talking about the need for capacity building and leadership training in conservation and wildlife management, I thought to myself, how did it become clear to you that there was a gap there, that we needed a company dedicated towards training and capacity building in this very, very special biodiverse ecosystem? Was there something missing, or did you just feel like more needed to be done to upskill people to be able to lead and build capacity?
I'm going to answer your question in two ways. And the first one is that I always had a drive to actually start my own business one day. And I think that was the main thing. But the second one, which I think is also very important, I mean, I've been in the conservation sector for more than 15 years now, and I've seen how we, for instance, train our rangers. I've seen how we train our key staff that are very, very important and actually make this place a success, And I saw that there was a need to actually start focusing on competence-based training interventions, because I've realized that we tend to spend quite a bit of time on theory When we train rangers, if I could just focus on rangers as an example, we've got a variety of programs that we run, but I'm just going to stick to the field ranger program right now. We take them into conservation areas, we train them how to become rangers, but then we don't give them the practicality that they require. So then I wanted to close that gap, because I wanted to bridge the gap between the theory and the practical element, so that by the time people conclude or finish their course, they know exactly what questions to ask. They know exactly what is required of them. So that was basically the opportunity or the need that I felt needed to be solved in the conservation space with regards to capacity development.
And I guess you both are the perfect people to ask about. People often talk about leadership. How do you develop leaders? Like, how do you create leaders in industry, titans or captains of industry or whatever? And a lot of it's quite generic, because it's just like a catch-all term. Well, this is how you be a good leader. But the thing that I find interesting that's important to think about is, for specific industries, specific kinds of jobs, there are different things required of leaders. And so I'd love to hear from you both in your different ways, different kinds of companies, different kinds of work scopes. What kind of qualities are needed for effective leadership in specifically conservation, sustainability, and ecotourism? Natalie, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So I think firstly, it's really, really critical to recognize that leadership doesn't require a title. Okay, so leadership happens at every level on the ground. So to give you an example of the workflow in a conservation operational environment, we're sitting out here at the top of the mountain, and we send employees out into the field, and they need to have the personal agency to know how to manage themselves and others in the event of an incident, as an example, or when responding to an incident such as a fire or floods. So there's a lot of personal agency that revolves around that leadership capability. And I think core to the skills development is that it's understanding the lay of the land. And I think when we empower our employees and our colleagues through the type of skills and capacity building that Sibelo and his team provide, you're creating an opportunity for an individual to respond in a manner that they've got the personal agency to respond. And then secondly, also because they understand the environment that they're working out in, because they've been out in the field in a training opportunity. Just by knowing the lay of the land, you've got that self-confidence to do what you need to do. And then if I were to reflect on sort of other manners in which we as Cape Nature have facilitated leadership, is very much in terms of how we've structured or organized the organization. So as an example, there are 4 landscapes that comprise Cape Nature, or the Western Cape Province, and each of those landscapes have a landscape manager. And that landscape manager oversees 2 landscape unit managers, and they too are responsible for teams. But the point I want to make is that the structure has at least one protected area reporting directly into a landscape manager or a landscape unit manager. So in that manner, we try to facilitate leadership through creating a direct line between someone who's got lots of experience. A lot of colleagues have got years and years of experience, and you create an opportunity for mentorship and coaching at the level of grassroots conservation action, and then the strategic sort of policy level of conservation action. And in that manner, we strive to engender leadership through the development of skills and capacity, really towards empowering colleagues so that you're more able to practice the leadership that we require. I just also want to mention that the environment in which we work has changed drastically. We've got lots of stakeholders that we work with. A big part of leadership is listening and approaching a scenario with curiosity, and to engender a conversation in order to find a mutual agreement or solution. And part of that leadership skill that we really try to engender is the fact that we have to agree that sometimes we're not going to agree. But if we don't agree, then we know we've got gaps and we can work towards solutions.
I see. I really like the idea that specifically with conservation, ecotourism, and sustainability, the goal of leadership programs and leaders is to capacitate, embolden, and upskill people so that when they go out into a nature reserve or go out into the field or whatever, they are confident and they have the skills to deal with the unexpected, or at least to deal with challenging scenarios where there isn't backup and you can't outsource the decision to somebody else. You make it yourself. And a lot of the leadership work that you guys do is strengthening the kind of decision-making instincts of people, different people out who go out onto the reserves to make the right decision in all environments on their own, which is really cool. And that leads exactly to what you do, Sabelo. So please tell me a little bit about like the theory to practice. So like what kinds of things are you teaching people how to do with their hands, with the tools and technologies they have available to be effective?
I think it's not just in South Africa where I have observed this particular challenge when it comes to development and leadership within the conservation space. So if I can give a very, very practical example. So typically you'll have a student that comes out of college, out of university, who has studied nature conservation or environmental science or whatever course that may be. They become an intern at a nature reserve, and after a few years they become, let's say, a field ranger. And after they become a field ranger, they have an opportunity to either become a section ranger, depending who you work for, or they become a nature conservator, and then maybe after 10 years they become a conservation manager. What happens there's obviously a transfer of skills from when they started and whoever that they've been engaging with, whoever that has been supervising them up until the level of them becoming a conservation manager or reserve manager. But what is missing in that is that they are getting pretty much the same skills that just keeps on getting transferred. Some of those skills are technical skills, which are critical, right? Because in order for us to protect these places and maintain these places, we need those ecological skills, botanical skills, and so on and so forth. But what we're missing, Natalie mentioned that we're living in a very, very complex world now. There's a lot that have changed. The conservation sector in general is faced with serious challenges, and we're actually losing species. We have issues with invasive species all over the place. The problem is getting out of hand. It means we need a different type of leadership in terms of thinking, critical thinking, people that are going to bring, problem-solving skills. But then at the same time, we also need people that are going to look at the opportunities and say, okay, look, I'm managing this protected area. How can I make it sustainable? Because remember, the first place that the political leadership cuts the budget is within the conservation sector. So now we need to start developing and training managers and leaders that are able to look beyond the technical skills. How do we embrace those entrepreneurial, skills, so that the people that is running a nature reserve, they look at things differently? It's not just about your ecological values, but you look at your tourism values as well. Say, how do I enhance this? How do I improve this so that I can have more visitors, so that I can have more income into these conservation areas? So I'm saying you need a very strong element of someone who understands the financial side of things, someone who is able to learn entrepreneurial skills, so that they are able to basically elevate their conservation area to the next level.
My family are hardcore Cederbergers and have been since 20 years before I was born. And my parents keep disappearing on weekends, and I live in Johannesburg, and I'm calling them and it's not even ringing. And I'm like, well, I hope that they're not in trouble. And I call my siblings and they say, no, they went to the Cederberg. And then they come back and I say, why were you in the Cederberg? And they're like, oh no, we just spent the weekend clearing some pathways, doing some trail maintenance. And that sounds a little bit like what you're talking about, because they're part of these groups of local community action groups that are led by conservationists, led by people with authority, led by people from organizations like Cape Nature with skills to do things like ecological monitoring, alien vegetation removal, and trail maintenance, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell me a little bit about some of the new technologies that people are able to use and the new tools to be more effective at conservation and ecotourism.
Yeah, so once again, it has to do with how do we respond to the complex world that we live in. I mean, I'm going to use a very, very simple example as well. We've heard of the political speak about, land and land expropriation. We've also seen people, invading land. There are certain parts of South Africa whereby we're deproclaiming some of the conservation areas, the people that are basically invading biosphere reserves, and so on and so forth. But how do we manage those situations? So once again, if I can just link that up also once again with leadership, how do you then build leaders that are able to detect those problems before they occur? How do we start looking at scenarios and do scenario planning as conservationists so that you can already detect those different or potential challenges that may bring serious issues to protected areas? But to answer your question specifically, so we embracing the technology. We started adopting AI and said, okay, look, how do we, as a simple example, use artificial intelligence? How do we use technology to help us to manage our conservation areas better? I know that there's a lot of negativity to a certain extent around data management, data security when it comes to technology. But how do you take what is available to us so that we can make our work better? I find there are conservation areas, do game counts and using drones, we use camera traps to monitor species. We use data analysis or data analytics to basically, work with quite a lot of data that would help us in making certain decisions that are very, very important for people to achieve the objectives of their nature reserves. So we try to combine those at Contour. I mean, some of the projects that we've been working on, we've been looking at, the invasive alien species and how much water that gets gained after you've cleared some parts of the catchment areas. What do you do with that data? That data is very, very important for you to make certain decisions going forward. But there's a whole lot of other technologies that could be used in terms of managing the conservation areas.
Totally. I mean, people talk about using drones and others to fight poaching across the country. And it's not just rhino poaching. I know that the Western Cape is a particular issue right now of indigenous plant life being ripped up and sold and sent in all over the place. So I'm really glad to hear that there are all these different kinds of technologies people are using. So when thinking about the future of conservation leadership, upskilling and training new people, where does the money reside, Natalie? It's the age-old question. Sabelo said the first time there's a budget cut from a politician, it's conservation. How do you continue to find money to keep all of this together?
Yeah. So look, the budgets are finite. It's not that we don't have budgets. This is now government funding. So absolutely, we do have budgets. Is it enough? No. Has it evolved together with the society that we're living in and the complexity that life has become? No, not quite. So one of the ways around that is being innovative around how we go about doing our work. So just as a basic example, this is an extensive nature reserve that we're sitting in, and part of our job is to make sure that invasive alien plant species are removed. And how do you go about doing that? Well, you rely on things like satellite imagery or remote sensing or drone footage. We have to find innovative ways to gather the information at a low cost. However, technology is not cheap. It requires training, it requires specialized equipment, it requires specialized databases. And
maintenance
all of those,
too, things break.
Absolutely, and someone needs to analyze the data. So I think just getting back to the question around how do we do it, I think this is where, the partnerships are absolutely key to how we do our work. So not only do the partners bring innovation and research and technological knowledge and skill and equipment and everything one needs to do to just say, is this vegetation in a good condition or not? Is that species present or absent? They also do bring the financial injection that we require. And there's always a co-financing element. It's not necessarily rands and cents that we would contribute, but we definitely do contribute a warm body and obviously the collaboration around strategy or a data collection protocol. So absolutely, the private sector is critical to conservation. And I think the key message is that conservation is everybody's job, and absolutely government has a role to play, and it's mandatory that we look after it, but certainly we can't do it alone. And also considering that everybody uses biodiversity every day. Just sitting here breathing the air, I'm using biodiversity. So absolutely our partnerships are key. That doesn't mean that we don't go out and seek additional funding from other bodies or other funding or donors and such, but definitely our partners are a big contributor. And then, we try where we can to acquire funding from the various donors that are out there.
Can you give some idea for people who are listening and watching and who are unfamiliar, what kinds of companies or people are regular partners with Cape Nature and similar conservation programs?
Yeah, absolutely. I fear that I missed somebody.
No,
but
please don't do an exhaustive list. This isn't the Oscars.
Yeah.
We don't need to hear from everyone.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So definitely some of our key partners include the Nature Conservancy. So as an example, they've been instrumental in setting up the Greater Cape Town Water Fund, and that water fund is all about making sure that there's water security for the various cities that rely on the water that's coming from this very catchment. So other really, really key partners for us in terms of distribution data, species data that we need to make decisions come from agencies like the Cape Leopard Trust. They have an extensive network of a camera trap network out there, which gives us a good really sense not only of what the leopards are doing, but also what all the other species are doing. And if we know the leopards are there, then we know the other species are okay. We know there are small antelope and there are black eagles and various things like that. And then, of course, other key partners would be SANCOB, BirdLife South Africa. WWF South Africa is also a massive driver behind land acquisition and protected area expansion, not to mention their contribution also to invasive alien plant clearing and other aspects. And I feel I am missing a few here. The Dye Island Conservation Trust do incredible work in the Overberg area. And then, of course, exploring partnerships with, for example, Cape Peninsula University of Technology is a key partner of ours, as well as University of the Western Cape. And so I would say those are some of the few key ones. And then, of course, there are also intergovernmental partnerships that exist to facilitate this cooperative effort. Not that we don't cooperate, but sometimes it's nice just to get married and know that
we're going to
sing in the same tune.
For the long run, exactly. And Natalie, obviously a massive, massive part of the work that you do, and we interviewed some of these people in season 2 of Green Noise, is fire conservation and all different kinds of organizations, some of them professional firefighters, some of them volunteer, some of them concerned and helpful community leaders contributing to making sure that we manage the natural, I guess, circle of life of fire and regrowth and renewal and rebirth and then fire again.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's critical to also mention that, again, like I said, conservation is everybody's business, but so is incident response and management, and specifically fire. So we do live in a fire-driven ecosystem. The fynbos requires fire in order to thrive. But at the same time, if you have fire too frequently, we're going to turn fynbos into grassland potentially. So absolutely, the relationship that we have with disaster management, the local Department of Disaster Management, the relationships and the partnerships that we have with the fire protection associations, and also the volunteer groups are absolutely critical in terms of managing response, but also ensuring preparedness prior to a fire season. So I think just absolutely critical to note that these are key partners in terms of how we execute our function, and also acknowledging the financial contribution that those partnerships do also make when it comes to looking after biodiversity and people.
Sabella, I want to end with you on one more question about Contour Enviro Group. So now that you've successfully done what you wanted to do, which is set up a company, run it successfully, be your own boss, when you think about scaling and when you think about, providing the services that your company provides to more people for a greater effect and a greater impact, what are you looking forward to?
I strongly believe that, developing technology for conservation is really going to take off, because I think that's what we've been waiting for, because we'll be able to really, really scale some of the, the interventions, and those projects are not labor intensive, right? So that is one area that we're really focusing on, and everything that we do it for the people and nature, simply that. And we are obviously having conversations with other organizations where we could have these conversations, but we also have some, a partnership with Cape Nature whereby we use their conservation areas for some of our accredited programs. I think we started a program this year that brought over 70 people onto their conservation areas, where we trained field rangers and eco rangers on 3 specific conservation areas: the Warp, Frolicator, as well as Grootvadersbos, and we exposed people to completely different ecosystems, and it was amazing. And when people coming from other provinces and we started that this year, and we want to keep on working on that relationship and partnership and see how far we can take it. And right now we're just focusing on the Western Cape because obviously Cape Nature has got these beautiful landscapes. And that's where our focus is. And then when the time comes, we'll then hopefully get into other areas as well.
And what else do you guys do? It seems like you really, really are trying to do everything everywhere all at once, like that great movie was titled.
It's a good question because we do have other services that we provide. So one particular program that we're working on, it is linked to the old Working for Water program, which started actually on this nature reserve in 1995. The first tree was cut down by Professor Kada Asmal on this particular nature reserve.
Wow.
When they started the, what do you call it now, they used to call it Fynbos, but they call it, later on they call it the Working for Water. One of the challenges in that program is that, or one of the main objectives was to develop local contractors that come from local communities, mostly poor communities, and it would mostly be women, would be brought into the program, and they have to employ, let's say, 12 people, to come up the mountain, do alien vegetation removal and stuff like that. But that project has had a lot of challenges. So about 4 or 5 years ago, we did quite a comprehensive research for Agala's Biodiversity Initiative, whereby we assessed the impact of their program over a period of 10 years. And some of the data that we came up with from there was that, there wasn't a lot of attention in terms of developing those SMMEs working in that space. And after that, we developed a proposal and we partnered with the Table Mountain Fund, and we started our very first green MSME development program in the Western Cape. And we took some of the contractors from the Grabo and the Cape Town area. We gave them a lot of work, and oh my goodness, you should see those ladies. Some of them, they started buying like 4x4 bakkies, They were so amazing. We paid them over 14 million rand over a period of 3 years, and work they had absolutely no access to. We developed them, we nurtured them, we gave them a lot of business, training and mentorship and coaching, gave them hands-on experience. And right now at Condo, we create more than 300 job opportunities each and every year in partnership with various organizations. That include Cape Nature here and then the City of Cape Town and other organizations. But that program, I think, is a very, very important one. And that's one program that we'd like to grow. We have some formal collaborations with Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment, DFFE, where we collaborate from time to time on similar topics. But the idea is to grow that to the rest of the country because we have seen how it has actually expanded. We've also had other partners like CatSita, but I know that's where the real impact is because that's money going to what we refer to as the bottom of the pyramid. People that are mostly neglected or excluded from your conservation value chain and supply chain, if you will.
And also just from jobs, right? Just from economic opportunities.
100%,
That's amazing.
100%.
So how can people support your company more? I'm sure people have been listening to this being like, wow, that's a vibe.
So we are looking for more partners. We are looking for people that would run, for instance, as I said earlier on the conservation tech, what we've been doing, we've been looking for pilot partners. Some of the innovations that we've developed, we want to partner with other conservation organizations in different parts of the country.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much to the both of you. Such a fascinating conversation. We really appreciate it. So this is Green Noise. Wherever you're listening or watching, remember that there are many other places that you can find wonderful, excellent Cape Nature content. Follow Cape Nature on Instagram. Obviously, the website is there for you. Make sure you come to a reserve like Hottentots Holland very, very soon to see all the good, hard work that people like these two are putting in for yourself, for your benefit. Thank you so much for listening.